Ann Arbor's talk station, 1290 WLBY. One of the most frequent topics that come up on our Damian on Design is multi-generational living and the growing population, those of us, the baby boomers, who now are redesigning our homes to better fit our lifestyles.
And our guest today is an old friend of mine. In fact, it's about as close to a sister as I could ever have. But I'm going to, before we let the cat out of the bag, I'm going to read something that she wrote. Mm-hmm. And so I am starting to let the cat out of the bag here, right? Because she's a frequent contributor to a well-known rag in this country. I am now a statistic. Earlier this summer, the United States Census Bureau reported that the number of adult children living in their parents' households had increased by 1.2 million between 2007 and 2010. Our dear friend Jennifer Conlin is here to talk about her articles, to talk about critic card, to talk about life in general and living in a multi-generational family.
Contributor to the New York Times for more than a decade now. Nice to have you back with us.
Great
Thank you for having me. I always love to be on this show. It's too fun.
You and your husband are journalists, and you've traveled the world, lived in so many places that I think your kids were born in different places along the way.
One in each country.
Is that right?
Well, one in London, England, one in Paris, France, and one in Brussels, Belgium, and then we went to Cairo, and we did not have a child there. And we kept thinking we could, adopt a little Ahmed to bring home, but it did not happen.
Well, and one of your children, your eldest, is soon to come back to the roost that she has never been to. She's never actually lived in America.
Harriet is 23, born in England, went to college in England when we returned to the United States, and has just graduated and thought, maybe because I am an American citizen, I should try living in America.
And she has a totally British accent.
Actually, it's not as British as you would think, because Daniel and I both have American accents and we talk a lot. So, funny enough, I think she's worried about coming here and not sounding as British, and people just assuming she's lived here her whole life, because she hasn't.
Oh, so she now may need some elocution lessons?
Yes, if she had a British accent, then people would say, oh, you must have just moved here. But
how now, brown cow.
But she says a lot of British things terms.
Yes.
Jennifer, tell everyone about your parents and your family here in Ann Arbor, the Conlins.
So my father, William Conlin, is now 83, and my mother, Nan Conlin, is 81, about to be 82, actually, next week. Mm-hmm. And they have lived here forever. I mean, my father was born here, and he is fourth generation Irish Catholic, and also, I'm pretty sure, fourth generation Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Really?
Everybody has been in his family's here. And all his cousins are here. His two brothers, Edward Conlin and Tom Conlin, are still alive and here. And he knows every crevice of Ann Arbor. We can't walk down the street without a million people stopping him to say hello. And for our children, who had not lived in Ann Arbor or in America either until 4 years ago, I think it is just wonderful for them because they get to feel a part of a community.
That's right, because the family's been so entrenched in it.
Yes.
Father, a longtime developer?
Yes, real estate developer and attorney. My mother's always been sort of a stylist in that she's an interior decorator, and she still, is quite good at that. Now we live together, so of course I get to benefit more from her taste.
How is it that you and your family, your husband and your children, all decided to come back to the States and live with your parents and ultimately buy their home?
Well, it was all kind of a hodgepodge of last-minute decisions that had to be made because we were living in Cairo, Egypt. We were home for the summer, as we always did, and it was 4 summers ago now. And I was about to go back to Cairo, and it was the end of August, and my husband called and said, don't come back. I think that Egypt is going to explode. They were starting to put some press restrictions on journalists, and he was feeling that. And we did not realize sort of how the whole thing would unfold in terms of the Arab Spring. But we did kind of see that there was unrest, of course, and there was such a disparity of wealth, and there was a lot of problems, of course, that I don't need to recount under Mubarak. So he said, stay where you are. And it made the most sense to just stay in my parents' house. They had already kind of redone it over the years to accommodate our expatriate family because we came home every summer. So there was a bedroom that I could be in, and for Dan and me, and there was a bedroom for Florence and one for Charles, and of course Harriet wasn't coming back, so we didn't need to worry about her for the time being. And, and we just stayed.
And it's not just your parents, though. Your brother lives there, too, doesn't he?
Exactly. That is, that does throw a kind of another element into the story. He had just moved in. He'd been working in Chicago and had a job. And, it is a bit of a recessionary tale because we had to come back and reinvent ourselves. We gave up our jobs overseas. And my brother was having some hardship because he had been let go from his job. And between all of that, it made sense to live together and just sort of kind of pool our resources while we all, and as you know, journalism has gone through a difficult time. And so we had no idea, both of us being self-employed, kind of what our income would be. So it just made so much sense to move in with my parents.
How did you decide to write about it in the New York Times, of all places?
Well,
this was not a local Ann Arbor read. I mean, you have gotten so much attention now. There's going to be a spread on your family and Family Circle magazine as well.
There is. Well, I have very supportive editors back in New York at the New York Times, and when we were moving back, I sort of said, where should we go? And the editor of the style section, who is someone I've worked for 30 years, but the last, 15 at the Times, basically said, we don't need more freelance journalists in New York. We need people in the Midwest. So I was coming back, once I was back here and I started writing about Detroit a bit more, and then he said, wait a minute, one of the most interesting stories you could write about, honestly, is your family and the way you're living multi-generationally, because I don't think we thought it would become permanent, and then it did, because we realized how well it was working out.
That is amazing.
It's an amazing story, isn't it? Yeah.
When you started writing about it, did you understand the response you would receive? Because this is something that's happening all across America, isn't it?
It is, and in fact, those figures that Damian read off from that article I wrote are way up now. I think that percentage has gone up to even more people are living multi-generationally since that study came out in 2010. And I think people are seeing how it makes sense. A lot of older people have lost a lot of their personal wealth over the years with the economy, and all the difficulties the economy has had. Plus, you see a lot of people in their mid-50s who are having more difficulty in the job market than they used to because you don't have the same loyalty where you work for one company until you're retiring.
Because I've seen just recently, I read in something, I follow a number of blogs in the real estate, obviously, and development world. But what someone did point out is those statistics are not dropping even though the economy is improving. So even though our job growth rate has gone up, even though the number of housing starts, the number of new mortgages, etc., is increasing, and what they are suggesting, and there's no proof to it, but actually that maybe this is not an undesirable way for some people to live. Because if you look at those statistics and you start to draw what are the possible conclusions, maybe that isn't all that bad.
We like our families.
We
Who
like
knew?
our families. But then also when you put into the fact that there's been this shift with the baby boomers as this first group of baby boomers start to head into retirement, they want to stay where they are. They do see themselves living to their 80s. They see themselves being active and canoeing and biking and walking well into their 80s.
But you have to adapt your house in order to do that in many of
Exactly.
these cases.
And you want to be near care in case of catastrophe.
That's right. So Damian Farrell from Damian Farrell Design Group is an architect, and on Damian on Design, we talk about this impact of design on our lives. When you moved back into the house, was it set up the way, you had talked about the fact that you would come back every summer so your parents had places for you to sleep and all of that. But what about the aspect of growing older? You're in your...
I'm now 53.
53, you're my age, and your parents are in their 80s, and so did this house that you grew up in it, right?
No, but they've been in it 26 years.
Okay, so does it work?
It does. It works really well right now because the lower level, which is a walkout, is where we are, which is where my husband and myself and the kids are all down below.
Right.
And we have our own family room down there, and that's fantastic, and our own bathroom. Then the kind of ground floor is where we all hang out together, where we decorated our tree last night.
It's kind of the DMZ in your
It
family.
is. It's the DMZ.
Right, yeah.
And then upstairs is where you find my parents and my older brother, Gregory.
So they're still climbing stairs.
They are. Now, that is something that we're going to try to fix because, anytime, if they fall, that's going to be a problem immediately.
It's a long straight stair, and it's actually quite a steep stair. It's an older stair.
Yeah.
I know the house very well, obviously. So that's probably the only catch there. But otherwise, the rest of it is really open and flowing, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think the house could use anyway a kind of master suite on the ground floor, but that would be for them. And we might also put a study over there so they have a little bit more privacy. Because I do think it would be nice for us to have a little bit of our own space in that way. And especially they need handicapped, kind of railings in the bathroom and all of that kind of thing if we're going to keep them at home, which is the plan forever, I hope. Because they're not interested in a nursing home. But also you do have, a lot of these statistics are a lot of the kids graduating from college and coming home, which is what's happening with our daughter Harriet, who wants to try living in America and looking for a job here. And so that would give us a bit more space just for our generation, their generation and our generation. It does get a little loud sometimes for my parents because my teenagers have a lot of people over all the time, and we have people over. We're quite social. My father's very social too, but I think, when they want to read or, watch TV and we're all there screaming and making cookies and doing things, it gets a little overwhelming.
Hasn't this added, though, to the value of their lives as they grow older, your parents? Not to mention your life and your children's lives, but so many older people find themselves at a loss for what to do during the day. They're lonely. They don't have anyone there.
There is no moment that they can be lonely. and we also came back with our dog, so they have the dog, and I was just in New York for 2 weeks, so they watched the dog for 2 weeks.
You wrote a great column.
It was a great column about Shay's life with Bill and Ann.
Shay's grandparents. But so they never are lonely. And one thing that I love is my son Charles, who's a senior in high school now, plays the piano, and now instead of Coldplay and kind of Rolling Stones, he plays Cole Porter and Gershwin.
Oh, they love that.
And it's like the Carlisle at our house every night for 2 hours. We just hand him music books, and he plays show tunes. And I just don't think that would have happened
would never have happened
if my parents hadn't been there. And so he's grown up with his grandparents, as has my feminist daughter, who's a sophomore now at the University of Michigan. I mean, she did come home with a little, very small piercing in her nose, and these are very interesting, times for my parents because they don't necessarily get that. But yes, next week's column, because I do a column called Rivers Parenting in the New York Times every week. Next week's column is looking a little bit at my father trying to be politically correct.
That'll be okay.
How he doesn't always succeed.
Because one of the moments in all of this was when Florence made the dress out of condoms, right? and so
she didn't make it. She wore it.
She bought. I beg your pardon. So Florence wears this dress made out of condoms to a Planned Parenthood event in an Irish Catholic family.
Yes, that was a good moment. Yes. My parents were like, "Would you like a picture of yourselves with Florence in the condom dress?" I don't think they realized it was a condom dress at first. And
Well, that's an interesting design, Damian.
Oh, it was gorgeous. It was a gorgeous design.
Beautiful.
It was stunning colors. The way it was
Gorgeous.
was elegant.
Oh, my.
It was a very elegant dress.
And then you had to guess how many condoms were on the dress. And that was the raffle to raise some money for Planned Parenthood.
And your father won. No. We're talking with Jennifer Conlin at the New York Times, and she's based here in Ann Arbor, not only in Ann Arbor, but at her parents' house that she and her husband, Dan Rifkin, have now bought. The parents are still there. Her brother is there. Her 2 children, and now a third coming as well. That's a total of, 8 that are going to be in one house?
And then there were 8.
And then there were 8, plus Shay. Let's not forget Shay.
Plus the dog.
What recommendations would you have from a design perspective for families to make this work, Damian?
I don't think it's that difficult. I really don't. I think in Jen's particular instance, the stairs, I think, are the toughest. The rest of it really is opening things up and being sensitive. Transitions between floor materials, carpeting, rugs, can start to get things like, small tripping devices, doorways. I mean, it's, for instance, the one thing we've started to do in our design work is just put 36-inch wide doors everywhere, 3-foot wide doors, forget it. Why even bother?
That way, if you need use of a walker or a wheelchair, it's there.
You'll
be able to navigate.
You move furniture in and out. You don't. It's just so. It's not
great
just
idea.
that. It's just these simple little things that, as we think about new houses and new design, they're not hard to do. I mean, putting lots of blocking in the walls. So when you put handrails and stuff in like that, they stay there. They don't pull away, and you can add it to bathrooms and toilets. the technology now for, the zero threshold or whatever you want to call it, shower, the roll-in shower, there are companies making those things pre-formed now.
Oh, really?
So you just cut the floor, drop that thing in, tile up to it, and away you go. So everyone's adapting. The industry's adapting.
Design is one aspect. I think a bigger one, though, perhaps, is what is your recommendation, Jennifer Conlin, for getting along with family in the way that you have done?
That's the big issue.
There are two issues, getting along
Okay.
and decorating.
I forgot. Especially in your family.
we bought my parents' house, so it had all my parents' furniture and everything from we had in Cairo went into storage. And of course, my mother is an interior decorator and has beautiful taste, but she's kind of more Maria Buada and big rose, cabbage rose,
Yes, lots of
upholstery,
chintz and florals.
and florals,
yes, beautiful
and
stuff.
more kind of more Pottery Barn and IKEA, So it has been kind of interesting. We only got our things out of storage, most of which we then threw away, which is why you should never store anything. It's just not worth the cost. We closed down storage last spring, which was 4 years after we got back. So
But you had it that long.
We
in
had it
storage,
that long.
Paying for that.
Yes.
and it was just useless items, most of it. But anyway, but now, some of our artwork is up with some of theirs.
Okay.
But we haven't made huge strides, which is also why if they had their own space, then we could probably maybe take over a little bit more of the main.
So
the
maybe
main
being
floor.
respectful of each other's spaces. Awfully hard to do if your parents have had a house for so long and now they're accommodating this new family.
Exactly.
coming
And even
in.
though we bought it, it's still, kind of their house.
Yeah.
And that's one hard thing. And I know some of my readers have said, I don't know how you can do that. It won't ever feel like your house. Or they also say, when your parents are gone, you're not going to want to have that house. And I think, actually, I like the memories. I don't think, I guess I won't know until that happens, but I feel like
I
the
would
memories.
disagree with that. I realize these are very personal issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll continue to be very personal, right, forever and ever. But, that's having moved away 8,000 miles from my parents and going through that long-distance agony of packing up, and literally, I said to the movers, I want you to pack every single thing in that house. I don't care. It was 2 containers that came all the way from South Africa.
You wanted it all.
I wanted it all.
Yeah.
I would
It's you.
trade, looking back, I would trade everything to do what Jennifer and Dan and their family are doing.
I agree.
And actually, my in-laws would really fall over backwards to hear me say this, but I hope to be able to do that for them.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, at 85, they're still playing tennis and walking 18
Right.
holes of golf.
Doesn't
I
sound
don't know what
right,
chance I've got,
Yeah, I don't know if we would have moved in like this unless it all kind of was forced upon
Right,
us. I don't
yeah.
think most people kind of make this choice out of, they probably should more and more. You do find a lot of people, I think, when the parents get older, moving the parents into their place.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, in terms of getting along, a lot of people are surprised there hasn't been, a homicide in our home. And a lot of people say that there would be a homicide if they moved in with their parents. So I think you really do have to get along. And we had a long history of being overseas for 20 years and coming
They
back.
love having you back. But it's
for
one
long
thing to
periods
get
of time.
along while you're all there. You're writing about it for the whole world to read in the New York Times.
But you know what's great in this family? The sense of humor.
Yeah.
Well, some of my readers, do think I'm mean to my parents sometimes. and my copy editors joke because I always say, okay, they'll say, do you have any changes? And I say, here are the family edits. Because I read it to my parents.
Oh, that's too much.
But I have a few readers who I think are older, and one, I don't think they like the name of the column because reverse parenting sounds a little patronizing, right? But
They'd have to understand the dynamics that you have with your family.
Right.
And knowing your father as I do and how he is just out there. He is just a big personality and a lot of fun, and he's always joking.
right, and I get my
laughing.
humor from
That's
him.
right.
So
Totally.
if I
So-
write a funny column about him, it's usually
Yeah.
because he's had the idea first.
Yeah, right.
Like about him not exercising at all.
Oh, that was hilarious. They've still got the use of their joints because they didn't use them?
I know you can't make that up. I'm trying to make my father, the nationally known character he deserves to be.
The New York Times, Jennifer Conlin on the Lucy Ann Land Show, and Damian on Design with Damian Farrell. Great talking with you today, and a beautiful
Thanks,
column
Jen.
about a wonderful family here in Ann
We
Arbor.
look forward to reading more,
Thank you.
especially the PC one coming up.
Just wait.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Produced by Aaron McNair, studio manager for Damian Farrell and Damian Farrell Design Group each week here on the Lucy Ann Land Show. Ann Arbor's Talk Station, 1290 WLBY. Great job. You're hilarious. I love it. You did a beautiful job. Yeah,
I did.
it was